Evening. Good evening.
Hey.
Good evening. Just checking to see this stream come alive here before we get too deep into it. Oh, I see a stream.
We are on the internet.
We appear to be on the internet. That is
Awesome.
pretty exciting. All
Well, we
right.
can just mill around for a minute since we'll probably wait for some people to get in, right?
Yeah, I mean we can mill around. We could probably tell the folks who are here already that this is going to be a little different. We made an executive decision moments before airtime that this was weird enough of a topic that it was not going to play well for the audio podcast audience. So this is going to be video only. So if you're catching it live, that's awesome. If you're catching it on replay, that's equally as awesome. You just won't be able to talk back with us, but it's going to be, and it frees us up a little bit. I was thinking too to go like over, like we don't have to be quite so rigid. We try to watch our time pretty close, and if it goes a little long, that's okay.
I think this all sounds very diplomatic and fair. I think you're being honest with everybody, managing expectations, and you're going to deliver. I think you're gonna bring it on a whole new level because now you're actually just giving people. Like, think about how many thousands of hours you've put into this video editing quest over your life. And then now you're just going to just take everything you know and give it away for free to everyone in 1 hour.
I'm just going to compress it down into an hour, and I'm just making sure
Columbia City,
we're
Indiana,
live everywhere. I think
had
we are.
22 panels installed on his
Should be on
roof.
Facebook. Yeah, I see a few people in here. Are we getting? Yeah, I see the chat. Old Aviators here. Johnny McClung is here.
This company existed until I was playing.
See a few people in here. Are we getting? Yeah, I see. Okay, that was. Oh, I forgot my audio is routed through there. That's funny. Okay. Anyway, people are really seeing the behind the scenes of this show now. It's embarrassing. Oh, gosh. Quick, Brian, fill time. Okay, we're live. It's good. Everything's good. All right, sweet.
I have very few brain cells left. I told you I've been flying a lot the last couple of days, and I'm trying to build up I'm on a quest to build up my endurance so that I can make the Midlife pilot fly-in happen. Right, I'm coming from further away than anybody else.
Yeah,
is what I learned, and what I learned today is that if even on an hour and 45-minute flight, if anything goes wrong or it's especially busy or taxing, that can really take a lot out of you, especially when you're midlife. It's I had a transponder that doesn't like to consistently report information. So
yeah.
I in my flight from Nashville to Louisville today, and then also this happened yesterday around Nashville, but I had a lot of I did a lot of recycling, getting different transponder codes, trying different things, and then they would just get to the point where they would just say, "Just tell me what your altitude is," and ident, periodically.
Wow.
It was like that. But the weather's been amazing. Midday it's been super bumpy and windy, but the mornings and the evenings have been pretty incredible. Yesterday I did 3 different flights. The morning flight was to bring the airplane back here to Nashville with a friend of mine, Peter, who's it's his 3rd flight ever in a plane, and he just loves it. And so now whenever I'm going to get the plane, he's like, "I'll go," and so he films stuff, and he loves he's an audio guy. He loves
Yeah.
he loves just like the sound of all the radio transmission and all the saturated audio, and
That's awesome.
when people step on each other and all the weird feedback and frequency. He just loves all the sound of it all. But we had a funny experience flying back into Nashville. It was I got to hear ATC yell at an aerial survey guy for about 7 minutes, just totally berating this guy who didn't file any kind of a plan to do this inside of the Class C. And they kind of got into it, but obviously the tower won. So I got to see some, tasty, epic ATC battles. So that was good. And then later in the day, I took a business meeting with a former colleague, flew her around for a while. It was really good. And then a pilot who I hadn't met before who's about to take her check ride wanted to fly, and so we went up at around sunset and took a flight. So I did 3 flights with 3 different people yesterday, and then today flew solo from Nashville to Louisville to see a former colleague and then come back. But it's amazing how I'm trying to get a sense of the endurance of it all. You know what I mean? And it's it's definitely taxing. It's definitely hard. Oh, and speaking of hard, I had my second worst landing that I've ever had in my entire life on my return here. It's sort of like I felt really good. Like I battled a lot through this trip, and I learned a lot of things. I was getting infected all over the place. It was crazy ATC the whole time. And I thought, man, I survived. And I came in, conditions were fair, and I just dropped one, man. I mean, it was one of those where it's like, wait, is the ground still coming up? Wait, the ground's still, oh no. And then you try to put some throttle in, but it's just a little too late. But then now you're sort of in between a go around and just, I don't know. I should have gone around. But anyway, I pretty well slammed one student pilot style today, Chris, and I just thought I'd share that with everybody because you know what? You're gonna have some stinkers.
You are, for sure. It happens. You have been flying a lot. You've also been posting a lot of videos, and Johnny McClung noticed.
Oh yeah.
Watched your Magic Eye poster video, which was awesome. Great analogy. Too bad I could never see those things. I had to work real hard to see them too when I was a kid. That was
Well, I totally forgot how to see it today.
I have not flown
Thanks,
as much
Johnny.
as you. Last time we talked on this podcast was 2 weeks ago. I was in the Outer Banks. Cecilia and I had flown the 235 down, so obviously we're back. We flew it back last Sunday. My wife is still in the Outer Banks. Is coming back tomorrow driving. The flight back was not super notable. There's a whole video series coming on that. There's 2 videos coming out of that, but like the flight back was pretty uneventful. We did have one pocket. It was pretty smooth till we flew over like Mount Storm, West Virginia, and some of that area coming over the mountains there. We were smooth, and then we were rocked real good for about 30 seconds, and then it was smooth again. So it was kind of one of those exciting, like, what is going on here moments. And then the other, I flew the day after we got back with a guy in the 172 who wanted to mess with some of the electronics in the plane. He hadn't spent a whole bunch of time in this specific plane. It was like, let's just go up and putz around and you can show me all the cool bells and whistles, the audio panel and stuff. So we did that. And then Cecilia and I tried to go get some nighttime in. She has convinced me to take her to Cincinnati to see a concert later in March, but which means we'll be coming back from Cincinnati to here at like midnight. Which would be my first real significant night cross country. And so I thought, well, I'm still current legally and reasonably proficient. I think my last night landings were probably, I don't know, a few weeks a month ago, maybe. So, still plenty in that period, but the other night we were like, let's go out tonight and just like go get 3 more night landings, and it had been pretty windy that day, like probably like 20 to 28 knot gusts, like just like an hour before we were going. But it was dark, when the sun goes down, it typically gets pretty cool. So I think it was probably pretty consistently still like the winds were still 10 to 15 knots, but pretty much down the runway it looked like. So we take off Fairmont. It's already dark. It's dark, like not sunset. And there's a crosswind from the right. I could see, I knew that there was a crosswind coming from the right, and the takeoff was normal. But as soon as we got about 30 feet off the ground, like above the hill and the trees, it was wicked. And it's dark and wicked and scary. And we're not climbing very well. And I figured out later why we weren't. Like I was still the whole time. So the crosswind was coming from the right. Okay. I was still struggling to just keep my nose aligned with the runway, like not letting it crab into the crosswind. So effectively, because I was banking right to stay lined up with the runway, but trying to keep my nose straight with the runway instead of letting it turn into the wind. So effectively, I was slipping.
Yeah.
you know, and I couldn't figure out there in that brief second why
So
climb
you were
was so bad.
cross-controlled while trying to climb.
Yeah. I said,
Yeah.
"Well, as soon as you're off the ground, you ought to be turning into the wind." I mean, that's the, you know, that's how you
Yeah.
climb. So anyway, it was enough that it was rough enough, and she's very rarely scared, that we got up off the ground and she's like, "Let's just go back." And we
Yeah.
turned right around and landed again. Said, "We're not going to do this tonight. There's no sense in this. It's just crazy." So
Oh,
that's been,
man.
yeah,
Good
that's
on
been
good
my,
good on her, though, for having her own, passenger minimums.
yeah. She was like, "Nah, we're not going to do this." I'm like, yeah, I agree. Give me a good out for it. So, yeah. So this is fun. So here's the plan for tonight, I think, Brian. Tell me if you have other plans. I have a video that I've never published that I recorded in like June, where I took a friend of mine's son, he's a high schooler, up for his first flight. He was considering following his brother's footsteps into the Air Force. And we went up in the 172 and we just kind of putzed around a little bit, but I never released the video. So I thought what we would do is I'm just going to work through my video editing workflow, like from the beginning,
Yeah.
edit this video, and then here's the hook at the end of it. It's going to be, I'm going to publish it, but only as a patrons only special bonus at patreon.com/midlifepilot. So only patrons of the Patreon will ever see the finished product. But it was one of those I hadn't really planned on publishing, so I might as
You had
well.
something in the can that you could mess with and show everybody how you do your thing.
Yeah. So we'll just kind of go from the beginning, if that's okay. You can keep an eye on comments. We'll talk through the process as we go, and then maybe you can chime in with your no. One dog geek. Yeah. Okay, here's a good question. You're really going to edit and publish a video in less than an hour? No. No, it's not going to be less than an hour. And I'm going to skip some of the middle of the flight, I think, like just to get the point across of how it would work, and then I'll backfill it later and finish it before I publish it. But yeah, because I mean, it would realistically be a very much multi-hour process to do one, all the way through.
Well, maybe the next episode can be, can Chris do it in 1 hour? And then we just watch you sweat and try to make a video in 1 hour.
Oh, there would be sweat, undoubtedly. So can I show? Let me share my screen if that's okay, and we'll get into this edit. So, whoops. That was not smart. Let's do this. Can you see?
And this is as much as this is a demonstration, also, like, people can chime in with any questions that
talk.
they have along the way. Yeah.
Yeah, talk about it all. Okay. All right, so let's do this. Let's do this orderly. So first and most important thing that's going to get overlooked here is file management. So I have a system for that. Boy, this is going to be hard to see, I bet, on him. I apologize. So I'll just kind of tell you what these individual things are. So like, this is basically what a project will look like for me every time I do one. Can I zoom that in? Let's see here. I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time on that. Okay. Basically, I will make a folder for each camera that I use in the plane. In this case, and I start them with numbers. So 01-main, which is my main, like overhead, like cockpit view. 02-pilots, that's my looking at the pilots. 03-window, that's typically one I've got looking out a window, but I'll call them whatever it is. If I used a different angle, I'll call it. 04-wing are the wing clips. So then inside each one of these folders are just the raw MP4s out of the, so that's just, I'm scrubbing through the clips, right? That's just all of the clips out of the camera, out of the GoPro. So the main camera and the pilot's camera, I use a GoPro 8. The window camera is the oldest one I've got. It's like a 6.5. It's a 6. And the camera that I put outside in most of the cases is a Hero 7. Then I have another folder for audio, and in this folder are two files because I use a Zoom H4n audio recorder. One that has, what I like about it is it's got two physical audio inputs you can plug XLRs or quarter-inch connectors into, and it also has a built-in stereo microphone. So I'm recording all of those at the same time for every flight. So I use this track, the audio track. You might not be able to hear this on the stream right now, but it's just a stereo, what it sounds like in the plane audio.
Quick interjection here.
Yep.
People are asking what software you're using, and One Dull Geek made the point that it definitely doesn't look like DaVinci Resolve, which I believe is the greatest, but I know we have differing opinions.
We definitely have differing opinions. So this is Final Cut Pro. I'm a Apple fanboy through and through. My whole business of video editing I've been a Final Cut person from the start. I also have the Adobe suite, so I use Premiere for some things, but it is Final Cut. Yeah. So the other audio track is the recording that's plugged into the backseat headphone connector, and it is the audio from the intercom, which we'll get to in a minute when we put it in there. Then I've got a music folder that's empty right now because I haven't picked music. We'll talk about that later. And then I have my iPad recording, so I record on my iPad every time, and then just that file I transfer it by AirDrop from my iPad to my Mac when I get home. It's just a full screen recording of ForeFlight the entire time.
I have a question about that real quick. That's
Yep.
something I never do is record for flight. How big are, if you fly for an hour, how big is the file?
This file is 5.33 gigs, and it was 46 minutes long.
Okay. And
So
what
not
resolution
terrible.
does it record at?
Let's see. Well, it's definitely full, so it's going to be whatever your iPad. You have a mini as well, don't you?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so let's see what this final file was. This file's output was 1440 by 1920.
Okay. So basically HD.
It's the size of the screen. Yeah, I mean, so it's inverted though, right? Because 1920 is tall, and it's only 1440 wide, so it's actually going to be bigger. Wait,
Cool.
how's that?
And One Dull Geek is asking if there's a way to reduce the file size of the iPad recording. I don't know if there's something equivalent in the Mac world for Handbrake, but I use Handbrake for
I
things
mean,
like that.
Handbrake. I have a Mac version of Handbrake, but
Cool.
you can do it with. There's a piece of software called Handbrake, and it will do the trick. So anyway, that's what's in my project file, and then I have a handful of assets that you've seen if you guys have watched my videos, which I know you have, right? So you've got the assets that you've seen in my video, right? Like the end card, the little animations for the various things that I promote throughout the thing. I've got all of these things here in this folder, the stuff that I use every time. And it's just in an assets folder that I can import every time that I start a new project. So let's talk about that. So I have a new project. I'm not going to get into the details of how to use the editor, right? Because this is going to be different for everybody. But basically, the first step is going to be importing your footage, obviously. So you would come through, you'd pick all the stuff you want to import, and you would import the footage. That's pretty. I don't know how your editor would do it, but it's, you've got to get the stuff in here at some capacity. Then I like to organize it because one of the things that makes me crazy about editing video in general is how easy it is to get disorganized pretty quickly and not know your way around a project. So I try to keyword all of my stuff. So I have everything broken out over here on the top left. That just basically the camera angles that we just saw right now, like main, pilot, window, wing, audio, and the assets are all in individual subgroups over here so I can find stuff easily, right? Okay, and interrupt me as you need to, Brian. I'm just going to go. One of the reasons I like Final Cut so much is the multicam editing workflow. I think works really good. So if you're going to do multiple cameras, you need a good way to manage those. So the first thing I do every project is I need to make the multicam clip of my project where all the angles are synchronized. I've got them all up at one time. I can see all the angles and I can start making decisions. And that includes the audio too.
And this is, by the way, I think this is easily the moment that makes or breaks it for anybody trying to do this. If you have a clear path to getting all your things synchronized, and know how to get that done, it makes the rest of it gravy. But if you are struggling with that part, then you will probably never get a project done.
Yeah. So this is tough. This is the hardest part. So bear with us through this. This isn't exactly easy. This is a process that takes a little bit of time to get a process down. But then once you figure out your workflow, you can make it happen. So I pick the first clip of the first angle, and in Final Cut, it's just right clicking on it and saying new multicam clip. And I'm going to call this 172 multicam. Call it whatever you want. And your settings will vary, but it's a 4K. I do everything in 4K at 23.98 frames per second. That's just my workflow. So this is manual process for me now, because there are ways to synchronize these automatically. Like if you were smart and had all your cameras recording at one time and could see the same thing or hear the same thing, you could make an audio mark, and the software could do this by itself. I've just found this workflow works for me. So I make a new multicam clip, and what it does when you open that multicam clip in Final Cut, so down here at the bottom now, this says angle 1, and it's put this one single clip into the timeline as angle 1. So I rename it 01 main. I make it look like my other cameras, and then I just start adding angles. I'll show you this in a minute. So pilots is going to be the second one, just like our clips. Add another angle, and we're going to call this window, because that's the outside of the window cam. And then we'll add another angle, and we'll call it wing for the outside shot. And then I'll add another angle, and this is iPad. Then I'll add another angle, and I'll call this intercom. My audio's got to get synchronized in here too, right? And then the bottom one will be, I call it NAT. That's a showbiz term for natural audio. NAT, N-A-T, you call it whatever you want. That's just the inside the cabin sound. So then I'm going to lay all my clips in their appropriate lines here. I've just made individual tracks, if you will, for each angle, right? So I go up here, I've already got the first clip in there, so I'll grab the rest of these in main, and they're in order, and there's no gap when the GoPro separates these, a seamless transition between them. So I just lay them all out here. So now you see I've got this really long, this is the full hour basically of the flight, all laid out here in one synchronous order of that first angle. So then I go to the pilots, I grab all those clips, I drop them right here in the pilots. Now you can see already how different a length that is. That's because I didn't start the pilot camera as early as I started the other one. This is where the synchronization piece will come in here in a minute. Grab all the third angles, just drop them in here. Grab all the wing, drop them on the fourth line. Deal with the iPad later because it's a little bit of a pain in the butt. Here's the intercom audio. Here's the NAT audio. Okay. So once all the clips are physically here, there's one key moment that I use to start the synchronization, and it's one that I can see from 2 of the 4 cameras, and that is starting the prop. So I synchronize the main camera and the wing camera first, because I can see the very first move of that propeller in both of those cameras. So I have a good starting point for that. So I'll come up here and I'll view the main camera until engine start. So I zoom in here so I can see it real well. There was the thing. See that very first maneuver? For me, it's easiest just to drag a clip to mark it. You can mark it however you want. That's just how I do it. I pull this clip over here to mark it like that. So then I view the wing camera and I look for the same moment. You can see how far I start the wing camera so early. Look how much further later the prop start is in this. It's clear over here. So now I'm watching for a flick of there it was, the flick of the very first flick of the propeller right there. I do the same thing. I trim this clip, and then I'm going to just align, I'm going to align this set of clips with the marker, right? So now prop start on both of those clips is at exactly the same millisecond. Okay, so now that I have 2 of the 4 camera angles aligned, the next 2 are a little bit harder because I can't see that same visual cue, but I can get close based on audio cues, like where the start happens. In fact, the pilot's is going to be the hardest one. Look, I didn't even start the pilot's cam until we were taxiing. So we'll do it last because it's one of those I normally would have done that way before that. So that makes that a little bit more difficult.
I have a quick question right here.
Go for it.
So in your view, you're not looking. Oh wait. Oh, I see. The audio waveforms are in the bottom.
Yes,
I see.
Of each of the clips. So that helps me see the starts.
Yeah.
Like get ready to start talking about flying. So I'm listening to. I like to get my seat. The clip I'm working on right now. The wing. Things are on the inside. Pull up on these little. Be like giving instructions on how to use your seatbelt. The guys do that. At some point there'll be a clear prop. There it was. I don't see your dad. I think he's clear. See? You get a pretty good idea. So I'm just listening for audio cues at that point. But because I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing, I cleared my mark too early here. we'll call that because I'm doing this video. 'Cause normally I would have kept my mark here for where the prop starts. This is kind of the tedious part, like I said. But it takes just a couple minutes. But once you've got it, you got it. Okay, so there's the prop start again. And we know it's pretty much here on the window cam, so I'm going to slide this over, and we'll get more precise here in a second. I'll show you how I do that.
I have one quick question.
Yes, please keep interrupting.
Are you viewing these files in their native resolution in 4K in your editor, or are these transcoded files?
These are proxies. I could do a 4 or 6 cam 1080 edit multicam without proxies, but not with 4K.
Because most people that are doing this don't really have a mega PC. So I guess ultimately what that means is that again, we talked about Handbrake, but what you can do. Maybe you just explain just a little bit conceptually without going into the wormhole of how to do it, how proxies work, so that people with lesser computers can still edit mega footage.
Exactly. So Final Cut, most of your editors will build proxies for you. Like Final Cut, it's pretty easy. Once you come into your session and grab some clips, you can just right click and choose transcode media and create proxy media. What a proxy is basically, it's just a much lower resolution version of the main clip, and so you edit in the proxy with these proxies all the time, and then when you're ready to render, it renders out the full res, high quality one. If you can't do that, I guess your editor kind of has to, though, right? Because it has to link the proxy media to the final, so you can edit off of it. But
Right.
I think
At least in the older computers, I just remember doing the thing where you would hand create all the trends and then use those in the editor, and then when you're ready to render, you just relink all of those files to the actual source
to the
material.
original. I never had to do it. I was always using editors that were able to
Well,
able to do it.
good for you. Good for you.
Here's a good question from Johnny McClung. Does your GoPro capture audio and video or just video?
Yep.
So it captures audio and video. Audio, in my case, from its built-in microphone. So all I'm hearing is what the camera is hearing. Brian and many other aviation YouTubers use a cable that you can get for your GoPro that has the appropriate connectors to take audio from your intercom. So you can skip the step that I'm going to get to in a minute with the audio recorder. If you do that, one of your video clips will have the audio in it.
And I would say probably like 95% of people that are recording flights like this are just using one of those cables and routing the audio from the comms straight into one of the cameras. But it's all valid. You have more control and you can more so validate. The problem with the GoPro audio input is, and I'm sure many of you can speak to having experienced this, where you think that you got audio and you didn't, and you had no way of really knowing. There's no meter. There's no way to really know what's happening. So you kind of guess. I had a plane that I flew in a lot where the only jack that would send audio to the GoPro for whatever reason was in the back, but it took me 3 flights to figure out, which one to use. So that's definitely a thing. But the audio cable from in-flight, or what's it called? In-flight cam.
In-flight cam, yeah. So now I've got the window cam fairly lined up. I'm gonna list clear, which is real close behind it here. Like, that is my clap. Effectively, one doggy was asking for it. Why don't I use a clap? A lot of people do. I could. I just know that I have enough markers in here. So even here you can see, I don't know if you guys can make this out on your screens, but there's 2 waveforms I'm looking at right here. I can very clearly see the clear in this view, but just based on the waveform. And so at this point, all I've got to do is now move them to synchronize that.
Clear prop.
Yeah, and those are, the window view. Here's the other thing, the magic trick. The window view doesn't have to be frame accurate, because you're never going to see my lips. There's no magic to it being exactly perfect. So the pilot's cam, in this case, you guys are seeing a weird case for me where I did not start recording this video until we were taxiing. So here's the very first clip of the thing. You can see the plane is in motion, and I'm looking at it. So what I'll do in that case, because I'm an idiot, is I will just scrub this video like from this view until I see that I notice that the camera's not recording. It's going to be there I go. I'm like, oh, that thing's not recording, and that's where I started it. So I can get a rough estimation just by where I hit the button, which is going to be right in there somewhere. Just drag these clips over to that marker, and then it's super easy to bring up a multi-up view. In other words, where I'm going to look at multiple camera angles at one time, like here. And at this point, I'm really just interested in these first two views, and I'd like to see them a little bigger, so I can do that. And I'm watching now for just cues, like visual cues of it being in sync, like what's happening earlier or later. Like I can see my head, like here's my head turning away in the bottom view right there. It's happening 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 5 frames before the main view up top. So I might just slide this back 5 frames. That looks pretty in sync to me. Yeah.
Does I'm sure that Final Cut has this. I know in Resolve to bump a series of clips or a clip, one frame is on the keyboard. It's the period and comma. At least on the DaVinci side, does Final Cut have that?
Mine are just right and left arrows if I've selected the clips. So that's how I just grabbed all these.
I just wanted to make that a point, like find
Yeah.
your keyboard shortcut for that, because if you're trying to mouse
no.
at that microscopic frame level, you'll make yourself insane.
Oh, for sure. Now, look, I don't want to get too in the weeds on this, so I'm gonna glaze over this part, okay? Because we're getting down into the nitty gritty here. But like, I'm an audio guy at heart, so audio is immensely important to me. So I've got some presets. So I'm listening to an audio recorder here on my intercom. So it's mono. I have a stereo recorder. This is a stereo file. I'm only recording one channel of audio. So I always, even though there's nothing on the other channel except maybe a little bit of noise, I mute the other side. Okay. I mute the right channel because it's silent, but I don't want there to be any microscopic level of noise that's in there. So I'm killing that. And then I've built some presets already, some audio presets that I start with for Midlife Pilot, the intercom and the 172. I already have a preset. It has an EQ and a compressor and some other stuff on it. So here's the audio I'm getting from this panel. And it goes, yep, that's the correct orientation.
Also, I notice a lot of people in their videos, when they're not maybe the most adept at editing them, they will do this. They won't take the clip, that even the audio, in-camera audio, they won't make it mono. And it only on the GoPro comes in
it's on one side.
And so it's important to know, just essentially to convert it to mono, if anything, because there's nothing worse than all of that audio coming in hard one channel.
That's right. Here's another trick. I don't know. Again, I'm sorry for the size of the screen. There's one little blip right here that you might be able to see. There's one little peak in this intercom audio. That is almost certainly where I turn on the avionics master. There's a pop that's going to happen right here. That right there. So this is how I start the edit process of aligning the audio. Is that I'm going to come back up here and try to find when I turn on the avionics master. I'm doing that just simply by watching both wings, and they are. So you're hearing audio now because I've got that channel turned on, but it's not aligned. Okay, so that audio is not real.
It'll definitely be when you have a headset on, probably, or right about when you put it on.
So here comes the audio panel. There it was. See all the green lights come on?
Yep.
I'm guessing that exact moment right there where my cursor is when this audio panel came on, that little click. So now to get this fine-tuned, right, I want to switch my view. I want to see my faces, because this is the best way to line up audio is with lips. I mean, that's the magic. Are we close or not?
Definitely.
Oh, yeah. This is perfect. So we're getting close. We could listen to Clarksburg's weather kind of while we taxi. So I don't like it. It's a little bit off. So I'll sometimes unmute the GoPro camera audio right by my head. Sometimes I can hear it. Listen to Clarksburg's weather kind of while we taxi. Although not in this time. I can't hear it. See if we can hear any of this.
And it goes, yep, that's the correct orientation. And you should be able to hear me.
Well, I'll just play it by ear. I'll sometimes just watch and see,
We could listen to Clarksburg's weather kind of while we taxi.
But I know what
The
you're
audio-
saying. Sometimes the ambient other camera will give you the difference between whether it's coming in early or late
Exactly.
or to what
So I
extent.
think the audio was behind, so I moved it earlier because I saw my lips moving kind of weirdly early.
Oh, yeah. This is perfect.
Okay. For the sake of this demonstration, we're going to call that good, okay? I mean, we could spend an hour
We could listen to Clarksburg's weather.
refining,
Yeah.
but you get the point of what we're doing here. We're lining up the audio. Okay. So I also have a preset for my NAT audio, and all it's doing is like it's what's called a high pass filter. For those of you who don't know, it says everything below, like the super low stuff below 80 hertz, which is just like rumble and wind noise and stuff. I'm just getting rid of it out of that NAT mic because I don't want all that junk in there. Okay, one more thing in the weeds, and I swear to you, we're going to start editing a video. The one downside, I'll even turn the screen share off so I can look you in the eyes and tell you how important this is. The one downside to recording your audio on a separate recorder unsynchronized to the video is a thing that has long plagued production people, and it's basically not having the same clock syncing all of the devices. And so what that I don't mean like time, like actual like time clock. I mean like the same exact keeping everything locked together. So the audio recorder's 48 kilohertz is slightly different than the camera's sample rate. And so what we're doing here over time, I'm drifting ever so slightly on the audio recorder. So it's a pain in the butt. This is one reason, if no other, than to stop doing it this way. But I found a master solution to that, and that is to go to the very end of the video every time and watch when I turn off the avionics master and see how many frames off the pop is in the audio from the thing going off, and then it just slowly throughout the video splitting the audio and putting like one frame of space in between it like 4 or 5 times to get it even. So you'll see here, like you'll hear it, I'm certain. Oh, that's pretty good actually. Listen, you hear my voice go away? I mean, that's pretty much right on. So in this case, it was a short enough flight that there wasn't a drift situation. Okay. So anyway, so now that we've got our cameras lined up, do they care about the iPad? Should I show how I do the iPad? I guess I should.
Maybe people can speak up for themselves.
Yeah, I'm going to do it real quick unless somebody says, please don't waste my time with the iPad. So if you've seen videos, I like to put this in a frame that looks like an iPad. So this gets a little crazy. I make what's called a compound clip out of this, and that basically means more than one piece of video in this clip together, and I call it iPad compound. I'll show you why I do this. So here's my iPad, right? But I like to put this pretty little frame around it. This is a frame that I got from Apple's web. I shouldn't have converted to chroma key. I should have just left it with an alpha channel, but this is just easier for me. So I just dropped this frame in here, and Final Cut has a effect called a keyer. You just drop this in here and it takes basically the green. It's like the green screen effect, right? Everything that's that color green disappears. And then you just make the iPad, the 4Flight stuff fit into that frame. And then both of them together. I like to make them just a little bit bigger because I don't care about losing the I would rather have my screen. I would rather have the 4Flight screen be a little bit bigger than to see the entire frame of the iPad, basically. And then we'll just move these bad boys to the right. I like to put them to the right. It's just been my workflow to like offset them to the right, like they sit over here in this corner. Okay, and then that's the iPad clip. Then I basically bring it in. I'll put this camera view behind it. If you've seen my videos, you've seen that that's typically how it works. But then I got to see where were we when we turned the iPad on. At what stage of flight we were, like before. It looks like right before we took off. So that'll be another thing you'll be able to see in your in your video when you actually start recording.
It probably helps that you use that for checklists, right? So you can see when you're actually punching it or something.
Exactly. Like here's what I'm looking for.
has,
Okay.
yeah.
See the ForeFlight, the little warning comes in on ForeFlight that says approaching runway 23, that little yellow dot right there. I'm going to use that as my marker. I'm going to watch for that on here. Little yellow dot comes in, it says approaching runway, not entered, but approaching.
So we could put like Clarksburg in here.
Where's the approaching? It's going to be, oh, there it comes. There
and
it
a
comes.
rise in carb temperature if it's working, and it is.
So again, you're hearing audio
then
that
we
does
bring the
not
power
align with
back
this
to
because it's
idle
not
to make
lined
sure-
up yet, right? We haven't time aligned this. It's roughly right there. You guys are
Bearded Aviator has a good question real quick, which is how do you record ForeFlight on the iPad?
Oh, that is a great question. I will show you that trick here in just a second. Let's go to my multi-view again. Let's view multiple angles, and let's make sure, I like to make sure that it's exactly to the frame, even though it doesn't matter. And that's plenty close. I can see the little
the pedals,
warning
we'll,
coming up on there. Okay. Look, I'm not set up to show this, but I'll do it this way. If you haven't done this on your iPad before, I'm going to show you something on my camera. You guys on your iPad, okay? I don't know if you can see this. If you pull down in the upper right corner, it brings up the screen that looks like this. There's a record button right here. It counts down 3, 2, 1, and then it's recording. And then the upper, there's a little red icon right here. It's recording the whole time then, and it's saving it to your photo album when you're done. And then you can do whatever you could normally do with your photos. At that point, if you would share it with like, I didn't mean to turn you off, Brian. I just meant to make myself full screen. That was
You're fine.
awkward.
Hey, doesn't ForeFlight have a thing inside it itself?
It doesn't record the screen like that. No, it records its own track log and its own flight, but it does not record its screen.
Oh,
It leaves
okay.
bread trails and records the flight data, but does not record the actual what you're actually doing on the screen.
I see. So that's what you'd use. Like, so I have mine to automatically record all of that.
I do too.
stuff.
When it starts going at a certain speed or whatever,
Yeah,
mine does too. Mine records by itself. But when you want the video, like
I
I
see.
have an
I
intention for the video.
I had that confused. I just didn't. I never tried it, but I thought that's what that
Yep.
was.
So check this out, folks. We've got everything aligned now. So now's where the fun really starts. Okay. So this is kind of like, I mean, there's more to this, Brian. I should really talk about this. Like the other thing I would do right here is like, you see, because like until I have my headsets on, you can't hear our voice, right? You can't hear any of our audio like talking. So I use the main camera's audio, like a plunger over here. Like all this that you're hearing now is from the main GoPro. It's actually squeezing fuel into one. So I'll fast forward now until I see that our headsets are on and we start talking in our headsets. Then I fade out.
That's the correct orientation.
By just automating this timeline.
Hear me, and I'm going to turn. I'm going to do.
Oops, that's the wrong camera. I was on the wrong camera. That's my fault. I'm going to fade out this GoPro.
And it goes, yep, that's the correct orientation. And you should be able to hear me. And I'm going to turn. I'm going to do one more thing. You actually have noise canceling on this fancy thing, so I'm going to turn.
Now it's just our actual good record audio, and I don't care about audio from that camera again until the moment. And those of you who've watched my YouTube videos, you never see this, but patrons see the full unedited video. So I do this for them. I don't turn this audio back on again until the very moment that we turn the avionics bus off. So like I'll come out here at the very end.
Avionics go.
Second that goes off, I'll clip this. This audio comes back to life, and then I kill all the audio. I don't need any more of this audio from these GoPros for the rest of the trip. Like that's it. We're set. So I'll just kill, just for good measure, I'll kill all the audio on all these cameras because I don't need it. And even just here's a performance tip for you: just having them enabled like this eats up. I mean, even if you have it muted, it's still got to think about the waveforms. It's still got to process. So just as a performance thing, I get rid of any audio that I don't need in this flight at all. Okay. All right. So our multicam is now lined up and we're ready to start editing. So to do that in Final Cut, you make a new project, and I would call this 172. Let's just call it like flight edit, because the first thing I do is I edit the entire flight start to finish. put that in there. I drag this new multicam clip that we just created down here onto the timeline. So now see, instead of the like 5 layers of, we have one big multicam clip that we just created, and contained in this clip are all of the clips we just made. So in in Final Cut, I have this view. I have this view that I will use 90% of the time when I'm doing this part of it. And I'll skip to where I want to start the edit. Like it's generally when we get in the plane, right? Because the patrons get to see the whole thing. So a lot of times I'll start. The cool thing about Final Cut is now it's just like finger editing. I can either click on each of these clips as I want to flip to them, or I can use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like with my fingers on the keyboard to flip between them. So I'm going to start with this view, right? Because I want to see this is like the establishing shot. So what you're seeing over here on the right, the big picture on the right is what we would call program. This is what I'm cutting to, and then they're my multicam view. So I'll just hit spacebar to start playing. Second one, I think. No, maybe not. And then as I hit these numbers, I'm switching camera views around. So now we're looking inside the plane. So then the seat belts, you found the guys on the end. We got to also put these shoulder harnesses in them now.
There's somebody outside the plane.
Wait, these work? Yep, that's the kid's dad. That's my friend Dan outside taking a picture of us getting our seatbelts on and stuff.
That's when you say clear.
Yeah, clear. Don't start right now. My God. You got it right. So okay. So this is the part I might skip a little bit, and I might come back and edit this later. Because what I really wanted to show was when more cameras are working right in the actual like flight. So let's skip ahead to where we've got our headsets on, where we've got the pilot's cam on, just so it's a little bit more interesting stuff to see. Okay. So I'll just click around. I'll look at the viewers to see what angles look interesting.
This is perfect.
So it's all happening in real time here.
We could listen to Clarksburg's weather kind of while we taxi.
So I'm just cutting around.
So when you mess up, right? When you choose a camera at a moment that you don't want to, what do you do?
So in that case, I'll zoom in on my timeline down here. Here's what I love about multicam and Final Cut. So you can clearly see with the thumbnails what angles what here, right? Like there's my people, here's our inside, here's the outside. And there's these teeny little lines that it puts between them. I'm sorry it's hard to see again on the stream. I can grab that line just by clicking on it and drag. And now what you're seeing in the preview monitor up there is the cut points. So like I can watch both angles that's between here. If I said, actually, I want to cut away from this camera on the left before I put my finger on my iPad because I don't want the FAA police to see me messing with my iPad while taxiing or whatever, right? I would drag it to that point, let go, and now the cut point is there. So right before I put my finger on the iPad, it's cutting away to that one. Or if you say, what if you made this cut right here and you didn't want this cut to be here? My timeline snaps to it. So if I get close to it, my marker snaps into that position. I could either just hit one again and put it back to that original angle and it'd be seamless, or pick a different angle right here that I wanted to go to instead. It's all right here in this spot. So I can just pick which angle I want it to be right here.
Awesome.
Yeah, it makes it pretty. So like you can see, once the tedium of setting the cut is done, like this part is pretty fun because for me, I'm watching my flight again. Like this is the fun part, like going through the whole flight again, and like, this is fun, right? So we get the weather
here, but that was information X-ray, and I heard everything I needed to.
And you should know. So right now,
and stuff.
In the chat, Bearded Aviator is saying that he's not been able to figure out multicam and resolve.
Check all of our.
So I have not ever been able to get multicam to work. It's been too much of a pain. So just as not to totally distract, but the method that I use, and I guess it's valid, but it's just not as clean and professional and smart as this, is I just lay out everything I combine all of I create compound clips of each GoPro to conjoin all of the clips, and then I select them all and link all of those clips to they're treated as one, and then I go through with a razor blade and I just hack about every 7 to 10 seconds across like all of the footage,
Oh,
right? And then I unlink it so where they're all now separate little chunks, and then I just kind of go through and choose I basically just delete the stuff that I want to get it out of the way. And I do it so fast because there's a lot of things where I kind of don't even really watch it that much. Um, but anyway, it's a hack method. It's not the way to do it. I would love to figure it out. And everybody says it's super easy, and I one dull geek. I hear you. Everybody says it's super easy. For whatever reason, it's just annoying to me, and so I'm not like I know that it's the better way, but I'm
yeah.
just saying there are find your own way in the software, however you can, just to get the stuff done, and then try to improve upon that. There's sometimes the just getting one perfect functionality can be the thing that inhibits you from just getting to work and just getting the thing done, or simplify, or just if you have a camera angle that's just because you recorded it doesn't mean you have to use it, or
Right.
if you can find ways to trim down the workflow of what you're doing, or whatever. Sometimes I just use 2 cameras, sometimes I use 5 cameras, sometimes I don't know. So everybody has their own weird kind of hack way through it. This way is very thorough and very intelligent and is the better way, but I just basically just uh hibachi it, and then just like I can do it. I can make a I can it's this I'm doing the same thing. I'm watching the video and I'm just ahead of it, choosing things, and then if I want to extend a clip, I just grab it and extend it, or whatever. So it's sort of, I guess I'm just trying to say, like, if the multicam clip thing is just a bridge too far for people to get
Yeah.
started,
Yeah.
just know that you don't have to do that. It's just
That's right.
it is the better way, but you can just lay your stuff out in a series and cut it and then manually, like it's not the end of the world. But also there's something to be said for, like, how do of course you put your full flights out for patrons. Um, Maybe a good question would be, how do you choose, how do you take an hour and a half of flight material and make it into a 15-minute
I'll show
video,
you.
and what guides those decisions?
Okay. So, I'm calling the audible here because it's 8:54, and,
So we'll do part 2 and abandon our
no,
audio podcast again.
no, we're jumping ahead. So I found another project here. We're gonna abandon the one we just started for the sake of this demo. I found another project that I still had the Final Cut file for, so I can kind of show this part of the process. So after I get the whole thing edited, I subscribe to a music licensing service called Soundstripe. It's not just for my YouTube channel; our business uses it. So I have some playlists. They have some music playlists in here that I like to choose from. This is licensable music. I'm a gigantic advocate of, I will not, in any project for my channel or for any work that our company does, I will not use music that I have not paid to license from artists that I have paid to use their material. There is a zero question in my mind that it is stealing and it is wrong. And I don't care if you think I'm using this song from this pop artist who is a multimillionaire. It's not going to hurt them at all. It is wrong, and artists should be paid for their music and their work. And so I pay for all of the things
By the way,
that
just
we
side
license
note, do you know how frustrating it is that I get copyright strikes
on your own music.
on my own music?
Yeah, I can imagine that's another discussion for another time, probably, about how messed up the whole industry in terms of how artists are managed and how that works. That's a whole different discussion. But anyway,
Yeah,
so
Soundstripe, and there's a bunch of these things. I use Epidemic Sound. There's a bunch of,
yeah,
and there's free ones too.
free ones too. So find some music that you can use legally. Just do not steal people's music. Whether you're monetizing your channel or not is not the point. It's a principal problem. Do not steal music. Anyway, so then what would happen is, so we've got this project. Here's one that I did back in July of this past year. This was just the 172 with some landing. So the final video that I gave for patrons was 55 minutes and 27 seconds. So it was just like what the other one was, right? It's this raw, uncut, like the whole entire flight from very beginning to very end, every single second, clear to shut down. That's the nature of the. Okay. So after I do a flight, and I've edited the whole thing, I've watched it again, I can kind of tell what the interesting things were, what's the stories were, whatever. So then if I feel like there's not enough narrative in the piece, a lot of my times I'll record voiceover. I'll just write things to help me, even while I'm editing the little short form version for YouTube. It's like, it would be really cool if I would just say, this is what we're doing now. While on the screen, you might be seeing like a time lapse, might be 10 minutes of flying time, but compressed to like 20 seconds of a time lapse to get from here to there. But my voice can do all the storytelling that it needs to from there. So I'll show you the actual final cut of what it looked like from the full long raw one that we were just looking at, to how I get it down to a short 10 to 15 minute highlight video. So back in Final Cut, you'll notice this will look exactly like what we were just doing. See how everything is the same, cameras are laid out the same, like every one I ever do is the same. Here's the multicam edit, like we were just working on. See this hour-long clip, like it's just an hour long, goes on and on and on. And here is what my short form YouTube version looks like. This is 20 minutes. So basically, the start is going to be different. I've picked some key clips and I've put some music to it, and I've written some voiceover. After a month without flying at all, and 6 weeks without flying this airplane, I took advantage of some beautiful summertime sunsets to head out on the 172. So there was a couple parts to the story that I thought were important. I hadn't flown this airplane for 6 weeks, hadn't flown in a month. So why am I going out tonight? Because I felt like I needed to work on landings. Okay. For some landings at Clarksburg. So this is just my pre-produced open. You guys still hear me when I'm playing music here?
Brakes are good.
Yeah. Your voice got a little hot there.
Well, that's because I yelled. Here's another little trick I like. Now we're going to get into the artistic weeds a little bit, but an easy way to set apart like amateur hour versus like pro stuff is audio and video don't need to cut at the same time, right? So you can see I've extended the audio of this clip to start underneath. My actual talking starts underneath the open before you see me on camera, right? So it's
brakes are good. We have the ATIS altimeter set, taxi light, and we've tested brakes. All right.
So what you're seeing here is a lot of cut up stuff. So a lot of things already happened between this moment and this moment. Like I'm 6 hangars further forward than I was. I cut out a lot of silence in these moments. Like a lot of I never advertise that these YouTube short versions are like linear or sequential in any way. Like I cut dead gaps and boring stuff all the time. So I'm talking through most of this flight you see on YouTube. If you were a patron and saw the patron version, there's much, much, much more silence and just like things aren't happening. So I'm just cutting through here.
Cherokee or Saratoga 4 Charlie Charlie is crossing the line. 4 Charlie Charlie, you head to the north hangars here? Yes, sir. You in the middle? I am. All right, I'll tell you what, if I'm taxiing out of the north hangars, can I get to the taxiway to 23 there? Yeah, I'll wait for you. Thank you, sir. Come.
So that was interesting, I thought, because we ran into another airplane. So I left that. Like I would normally leave this much taxiing, but that was part of the.
Appreciate it, sir. Yeah, no worries.
Approaching runway 0523.
You hear my 4-flight audio in there. I like to leave it in there. I leave the 4-flight calls.
All right, welcome back. Long time since I've flown this airplane. Long time since I've flown. It's been a month. So I'm looking forward to getting back out there. Got a little later start than intended. So I'm trying to not show all this. So it gets boring. So we come up here and I need to show my disclaimer. So I just kind of do that. 8 o'clock p.m. So we'll see how many landings we can get in at Clarksburg before we head back here.
And then time lapse.
So anyway, that's the
Nope,
plan. Let's just come up here. We'll do our before takeoff checks, and we'll.
One
we'll
Bill Geek has a good question.
Also, I want to take a look at the paint they did.
How do you get used to talking to people who aren't in your airplane? Oh, so it's easy for me. I like to talk in general. And because I filmed everything from the beginning, I just always pretend it's always we. Like it's always plural. Like when I talk to ATC and they ask a question, like it's not, I never say I or me. It's always we. I just always feel like there's somebody else there. I'm recording every flight. It's very, very rare that I'm not, that I don't have cameras recording. So I think it's more natural for me to assume that someone else is listening to me talk than not, I guess. So not much happens, right?
Port
So
Authority, we actually bought the equipment to do that ourselves now.
By the way, you should also just.
Area.
I could never do that.
do what?
Talk to a camera,
Oh, yeah, you could.
or an audience. It's not. There's no way I could do that.
Listen,
It's definitely something that I think that people have a gift to do, or don't.
oh, I'm terrible at it. I'm a behind the camera person. This is just I hate the moments I have to do. Like I don't do them as much anymore, but for a long time in the videos I was doing a stand up, like with a DSLR outside. Like I would do like open and close on camera every time. It's my most horrifically or at least favorite part of the videos I've ever done. I have to make myself do them anymore. That's why there's less of them these days. Anyway, real quick, let me jump to this. So
looking forward to that.
Here's the time lapse sequence. I always, I try to cut stuff, but also still show that I did a thing. You don't have to do this. Like people just assume you're doing the thing you're supposed to do.
Traffic Skyhawk 3852, Lima, taking runway 23, going to be in the area south.
So I do a lot of time lapsing, especially on like climb outs and stuff. This is always a good time to like skip ahead. And here's another case where I used audio.
Clarksburg Tower, Skyhawk 3852, Lima, 8 north with hotel inbound for the option.
Skyhawk 3852 Lima, Clarksburg Tower, runway 21, wind 230 at 5, clear for the option.
Runway 21, cleared for the option 52 Lima, and will remain closed traffic on the go.
All right, so there's a bunch of cuts in here. Like if I had done this whole flight, we wouldn't have made it to Clarksburg for another like 8 minutes. That was at 2:54 on the clock right there, and we land there at like less than 6, so it was less than 3 minutes. So I cut more than half of that time out. Between there and there was cut out. You just be strategic about it. And sometimes I'll do this little number. If you ever see that little dip to black in my videos, you can it just conveys a passing of time. I think that's kind of a long standing trip. A fade to black is kind of like a little dip to black is like something changed here. And I always do it. It's always a different angle coming back. Here's a pro tip. Dude, don't transition to the same angle ever. Like, so it's the behind the head angle when I go into this transition.
Some getting used to.
And it's a different angle coming out. Like, don't ever transition to the same angle back to back.
Fun fact. I always do that.
What? Transition to the same angle?
Yeah, it's totally the wrong thing to do, but by virtue of how I actually edit, it's just the easiest thing to do, and I don't care enough to do anything different. And I think that's an important thing for the children to understand is you don't have to do everything perfect, but it is a cinematic. That is absolutely the better thing to do.
Yeah.
But I just find it's funny that you're saying that because I'm sitting there thinking, well, what do I do? I'm like, oh yeah, I do exactly the opposite, but I do like more kind of glitchy transitions.
Yeah, so that's the difference. So I do that too sometimes. In fact, one of my latest ones shows me and Cecilia getting in the 235, and it is jump cuts of the same angle of us in different stages of getting up on the wing and getting in. Like that whole, I say don't ever do it. Things have changed a lot in the last few years in like general school of thought for edits. Like a lot more is acceptable now than really was like 3 or 4 years ago even. Like, so you do have
certainly valuable to have a traditional vocabulary though.
Yeah. So like Bearded Aviator asked another good question. So you literally delete it out of the finished product. Yes. The YouTube video, like many minutes are they never show up. They're not fast forwarded through. They're not time lapse. They just don't ever make it into the finished YouTube one, because what I've found, the algorithm, I can't be over 15 minutes and still be successful. It's there's a magic number there. So no matter how long the flight is, I'm trying to get these stories. In fact, the one I'm working on now, I'll give you a sneak peek of it here in a minute. It actually has some real live 8mm film in it, which is cool. I'll give you a sneak of it in a minute. But so all right, so skipping around, right? So we skip around.
Well, now let's say carb heat
back in the pattern again. I do that a lot. Like you'll see me come back like right at the downwind.
Actually,
but it's all action. I try to do stuff where I'm talking all the time, where things are happening. What is this? Oh, it's very rare that I do something like this with graphics. That's because I am not an animator, so this is hard stuff for me to like.
This is perfect.
Spotting a plane
Perfecto.
traffic that we're passing. You can't really even hardly see it, but I put an arrow in to help find it. That's very unusual for me. Here's a good example of using ForeFlight. You know, you see it in a lot of my videos, but I do like to show it off because I think it's surprising how well that performs for me. Like, best video I ever had was the one that I did on learning to use ForeFlight. I'm trying to find a clip where I actually have ForeFlight up, but I can't really find it right now. But and then I use music again. I bring the same theme back.
Nice, nice, nice.
Actually, this is a
Flaps
different.
are up. Repeat. Full power. Engines in the green, making good power.
Another time lapse. This is just getting us home. Try to time your edits. Sometimes it makes sense with the music. Like there's a change in phraseology there. You know, the phrase changed. And, you know,
All right, pattern out.
so like I'll tweak how fast this time lapse is. I tweak the speed of this so that it kind of, you can hear the change of the phrase of the music. Like, and then I'm coming back.
Skyhawk 5-2 Lima's entering left downwind for
The
2-3
little
Fairmont.
details.
All right, pattern altitude. Here we are.
Because so many of my videos are
Pretty much
so
just our touchdown point.
the same. I just try to be a little bit more intentional with some of the production elements that like, there's something that a plugin that I no longer have apparently that I used for something there, but okay.
Emergency.
In essence, that's how I compress a giant. So I always start with the full flight, and then I have a general idea after I've done that what the highlights were that I want to use in the highlight. You know, so then I kind of know the story arc. If I've got to record voiceover or whatever, then I pick some music, make it work with that, and then just use those same tricks, time lapse or fade the black in between or whatever to cut out stuff I don't want to be in there. And then this ended up being 19 minutes and 22 seconds long.
It's really cool for you to share all that because there's a lot of people that have a tendency to try to guard their, you know, their secrets or their, you know, their methods or whatever. And I just think that's bogus. It's cool to just open up the shop for people and be like, yeah, this is what I'm doing and this is what I'm not doing and this is what I can do better. You know?
Absolutely. There's a big enough world. I used to tell people all the time, we would talk about that. Like my wife and I, our video production company, we've been members for a long time of a group called the Rising Tide Society. It's basically a national organization of creatives, and their whole motto is community over competition. And it's just kind of that idea that no one's going to compete with me just by seeing how I edit a video. Like that's not, there's bigger things I hope that make it different or make people want to watch my content than like because somebody else knows. Plus nobody's the expert on all. I mean, everybody's got their own, there's so much personal preference. This is not like a objective art form. This is super subjective. And so if there are tricks that help people like get over a hump or break through a hurdle, that's fantastic. Like I'm going to show you my I'll give you a sneak peek into the one that just started. And by just started, I mean I got nothing down here. Like this is I have literally 2 clips on this timeline so far. So there's nothing to it yet. But this is how I'm going to start the Outer Banks trip video.
Oh yeah.
So this is actual. I shot this. This is all Super 8. I guess it's not Super. Yeah, I guess it is Super 8. That I did a couple years ago at the Outer Banks. So this is a whole roll of Super 8 that I shot. It's my niece, my dad, my niece. So
Awesome.
I have this whole family vacation here on Super 8 that I'm going to talk about the Outer Banks. The whole start of this piece is going to be why that area is important to us. And, you know, I had some aviation stuff in there because you always see airplanes, you know, along the beach. So there's some tie-ins to that too, which I think is super cool.
Yeah.
And then I have all this gold. I have this gold stuff from the years gone by that we've done. Like check some of this out. You guys are seeing this before anybody else can see it. So I've shot videos of the Outer Banks all through my history. So I got my kids. Look how little Cecilia is.
Oh wow.
I got some old stuff of these kids, including this is from 2013. One of my favorite. Oh, by the way, speaking of this clip right here, that clip of the birds over the sound was used in the NFL Super Bowl broadcast 2014. They licensed it from me and used it during the national anthem on network television in Super Bowl 2014.
Very cool.
That's my most famous clip ever. But I have my favorite clip, my favorite ending of video. This is from our 2013 vacation. Cecilia, this is years ago.
That's awesome.
Anyway, so I'm going to use some of these old memories and stuff that we have. This is all film photography here, so I've got stuff on film for years. But
Amazing.
I'm just trying to tell this story, and then the flight.
I like it because it's more. It's probably that's perhaps more personal narrative than you've offered prior.
For sure. Well, that's good. Final Cut crash. So we'll pretend like that didn't happen. Yeah, I need to do more of that. I think because I'm running out of. It's only going to be sustainable so long with 6 laps in the pattern at Clarksburg, right? I mean, at some point I'm going to have to show more than the flying and do so. And we said all along, though, I mean, from very early on the channel, once we start getting out and using the airplanes for stuff like this, I want it to become more about the adventures and the things we're doing and the places we go in the airplanes. That's and so I'm excited to do it.
Well, I think that's actually a really huge. That's probably a really good way to sort of wrap up, which is just to say that there's many different ways to do aviation content or whatever you want to call it. I think that the common problem that everybody faces is as new pilots is you start off documenting things with a couple of GoPros or whatever because you're just trying to understand what the hell you're actually doing, and it's really a training tool and just a document tool,
right.
And then if you're going to choose to go to that next place and continue doing it, at some point you have to. I guess what I'm trying to get at is that everybody has a unique angle that they can offer to the whole thing. So as much as you might see, the world doesn't need another aviation 101. The world doesn't need another whatever. Find your own thing. And I think that but it is good though to start small and with maybe the more quote unquote obvious things. Document you flying somewhere and then going to a restaurant and then flying back. I mean, there's a gazillion videos on the internet that do that, but you can put your own twist on it over time as you get more adept with just editing and using cameras and all that. So I just hope that people understand that,
here's how I look at it.
Yeah.
Well, I think that so there's value. We've said all along, there's value in recording your flights just for your own sake and whatever. There's also I just enjoy, it's like I get to fly more than I get to fly. To be able to come back and spend time in this footage again and watch this stuff again. I'm not in the airplane. I'm not paying for it, but it's like I'm just experiencing this all over again. And it's just one more way to stay active in aviation when you can't afford to fly 10 hours a day unless you're like Brian the last couple of days. But it's just another way to still be doing stuff airplane wise. And I think it's valuable. I think it's valuable just for myself, and I love doing that stuff. How'd you digitize the Super 8? One Dog Geek asked. So I wanted to do. We kicked around the idea. We do wedding high-end kind of boutique wedding videos. We do about 15 of those a year, and we very briefly kicked around this idea of doing some stuff on Super 8 that got real trendy here the last couple years, and we mess with the workflow. The bottom line is it is fun to do every once in a while. You would have to charge so much to make that feasible, just from the cost of the film, and also to have it processed the way I would want it processed to be good, the level I want it to be good at. It's expensive to have it. If you just pick what they call what do they call it, one scene. I don't remember what they call it. So they like look at the very first clip of the film and then they set the exposure based on that and then hit play, and you better hope the rest of it is exposed the same. Like that's the cheap way to do it. Or you can pay by the scene. Like they'll go through every bit of your footage, and per clip they'll properly set the scan, everything for that. So you start spending a lot of money on the digitizing. But it's it's super.
You
It's
can
super
save money
fun.
by doing it in black and white. That's one thing. There's a company called Cinelab Boston,
That's who I use, Cinelab.
and they're totally reasonable. Here's my 8mm film camera. It's a Bolex.
Bolex, yeah, baby.
I found it in a dumpster and had it reconditioned. But I think we talked about this before. But I've got a bunch of stuff that I'm about to crank out on this thing. Cinelab's about to get some of my money. You're going to slowly start to notice like things missing from the background of my.
So you have you?
It's like, wait, where did that keyboard go? Oh, it's gone. I had to sell it.
So you've been shooting. Have you been shooting aviation on that?
Some, yeah. But also a bunch of other stuff. So, yeah.
So I have a Canon 514 XL is my Super 8 camera.
Mine's regular 8, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, mine's Super 8. But if I had done it, if I had got into this like 5 years before I did, I would have paid like a third the cost, because nobody cared about these cameras like 5 years before I did it. And then suddenly trendy is like film is back and everybody's doing film again. And I'm like, I've had a fridge of 35 millimeter fridge my entire life because I've never stopped shooting film. But like now it's trendy again. So everything costs more and you can't find film that you want half the time.
Same thing happened with pressing records on vinyl.
Yeah, right.
Like I remember getting records made, for my stuff, for so cheap and so fast. And now there's a 9-month wait and it costs, 18 times what it used to.
You're very welcome, Old Aviator. Thanks for the guided tour. I know that was a lot. We got into the weeds more than I intended to, but it's like I could spend a long time. It's such a process. I get stuck on videos. Like I'm really bad about. I have to be in the right headspace. I can't just sit down and do one if I'm not either under severe deadline for something or I used to be better at it. Now it's just like if I don't feel right, I just can't do it. And so like those 2 clips on that Outer Banks one have been sitting on that timeline for like a week now, and that's all I've got done. And I haven't.
Some amazing stuff. I can't wait for you to get your act together on that.
I need to do it. Hopefully this week, because I'm out of town the next 2 weeks. Oh yeah, we need to talk about that offline. We'll do that in a bit.
All right.
Thank you guys for hanging with that. Sorry that was I hope it was at least some tidbits you pulled out of that. We've been wanting to do one of those for a while. What we really need to do, Brian, we should shoot ourselves. We should film ourselves like in our setups at the airplane too. Like I think we should do a series on like the actual airplane setups and like how we mount stuff and like how it all works out.
Yeah.
We should do that.
It's a funny thing. It's like I just flew a bunch. I barely recorded anything because you go through phases, at least I do, where I don't even want to think about it. I just want to go enjoy myself and do whatever it is I'm doing. And thank God for that, because my landing, like I said, today I was so glad that I wasn't recording anything, because I just want to make sure that I forget this landing that I did today faster than ever.
That's fair.
So sometimes it's good to not record everything. But yeah. So yeah, I'm happy to do whatever. We can break it down all kinds of ways. But I think again, everybody's got their own thing. At the very least, even if you just got a couple cameras and you're just doing it for document, don't kill yourself over like cinematic considerations.
Yeah.
Just get started with the bar being very low, and then you'll get better at things and build on it.
For sure. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. It's been fun. We will hopefully see you probably not in 2 weeks. Our schedule's going to get weird, which we will talk about, but we'll publish that ahead of time. So good night.